United States, and the White House has set the record straight on the new US-India trade deal, following President Donald Trump's claim that India would cut tariffs on US goods to zero. According to an official fact sheet, the agreement does not instantly eliminate all Indian tariffs. Instead, India has agreed to reduce or eliminate tariffs on a wide range of US industrial, agricultural and food products, while the US has agreed to lower its reciprocal tariff on Indian goods from 25% to 18%. The statement also confirmed that India will remove its digital services taxes and negotiate new bilateral digital trade rules to address discriminatory barriers. Both countries said that they will negotiate rules of origin so that benefits apply mainly to US and Indian products, and will work together on economic security, supply chain resilience and investment reviews. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Jayjit Bhattacharya, an economist and policy expert, joining us live from New Delhi. It's always great to talk to you on these issues, sir. How significant is this deal now economically? Now we have more information on it. Once you strip away the political rhetoric and the Donald Trump Truth Social posts around this zero tariff saying, is this really a structural shift?
Well, it is in a way, and in a way, it's a continuum of what was happening for the last 2.5 decades before this minor disruption happened in the last 1 year. So it is clear to any geopolitical guru that India and US are absolutely natural allies, both geopolitically and from a geoeconomics perspective. So the minor rupture that happened in the last 1 year, which led to a break in the trade, I think that's now very quickly coming back to a new normal. And the new normal essentially is that India's access to the US market will be at an enhanced tariff level. And also some of the access that US had to India will become easier, both in terms of tariff taxes as well as the non-tariff barriers that the US perceived. So work is being done on those aspects also in a comprehensive manner. Also, what is clear from the fact sheet that the US government has laid out is that there is a sensitivity on supply chain resilience and how third countries are twisting the global trade, and therefore how the US and India can work together to ring-fence both their economies from such threats of third economies.
And India is reducing tariffs across industrial, agricultural and food products. Which domestic sectors, if any, stand to lose the most with this trade deal?
Well, let's look at the ones which stand to gain, because it's not a zero-sum game. Specifically, areas where India has a competitive advantage, which is labor-related, areas such as leather, textiles, gems and jewelry. So these are areas where India stands to gain, which means that there will be also a large number of employment that happens in India. In terms of losses, it's still, we need to look at the actual text of the document to really say where India stands to lose, but for sure this will be a give and take agreement. So there will be areas where India will hurt. Some of those areas are downstream of GM produced agricultural input. So genetically modified crops are not allowed in India, whereas the downstream of these genetically modified crops are being used in US and exported to India, with the qualifier that once a genetically modified crop is processed, then any negative impact of the genetically modified crops does not stay. The problem is not that. The problem is that a genetically modified crop is 1/3 to 1/9 the cost of production of a non-genetically modified crop. So Indian agro industry in that sense will be handicapped because of the difference of regulatory ecosystem in US and India. So we have to really go into the depths to see where all we will take a hit. For sure, India will be taking a few hits, but overall it seems to be quite positive for each of the key sectors, including agriculture.
And India has agreed to remove digital taxes. How big of a concession is that?
Well, it's very significant. You see what's happening in digital is that sales is happening in India with no taxes being paid in India. It's almost like saying that we'll sell furniture in India, but I'll not pay taxes to anyone. So any trade that's happening over digital, there is no taxes to be paid. So if Google, for example, is charging Indian companies for the advertisement it's putting up out there, and it's one of the largest digital advertisement company in the world, there is no taxes, either indirect or direct, that needs to be paid to anyone. So the government has basically taken up all those taxes for the US industry. And that's very, very significant because, as we all know, the future of industry is digital. So I'm sure there'll be a revisit to this particular clause as we move forward.
How does this deal overall sit with India's Made in India agenda? Does it complement it, or does it quietly dilute it?
Well, there will be again no yes and no answer to that. Clearly, there are areas where the US economy is structured to complement the Indian economy and the other way around. But as the Indian economy evolves 5 years, 10 years down the line, there may be overlapping areas. But at the end of the day, it's free trade in the given parameters that have been laid out in the trade agreement, as long as the trade agreement itself is not unilaterally rescinded. So from an Indian perspective, from an Atmanirbhar Bharat perspective, it's actually good to begin with because it gives access to Indian companies to technology, which it otherwise does not have got access to. Over a period of time, I'm sure those technologies will be absorbed locally. And as long as there is no weaponization of the flow of technology, India does not have an issue. The issue of Atmanirbhar is not about manufacturing everything in India, but about sovereignty of the manufacturing process. So as long as nobody holds India hostage by not providing the inputs, that is also perfectly fine with India.
And as the world's largest economy, the United States holds a lot of the cards going into these negotiations. However, 5 years from now, who do you think benefits more from this agreement?
Well, it's a win-win agreement. Frankly speaking, US needs to keep its costs low to continue to stay economically competitive and therefore economically relevant. Of course, it's a very, very large economy. It will continue to remain the largest economy for the foreseeable future. In terms of whether India stands to gain, of course, India will stand to gain just as US stands to gain. India is the largest consumer market while US is the largest economy. Both have strengths. India is the fastest growing economy, large economy in the world. So clearly that's something that's going to give an impetus to the US economy. So together the two economies will be growing in quite a complementary manner. 5 years is a long time in today's geo-economic situation. It'll be difficult to do crystal ball gazing, but overall the structure of the trade deal is such that it benefits both economies.
But politically, Donald Trump, much like pretty much all his other trade deals, framed this as sweeping concessions from India. What will this stance do to affect the domestic pushback here in India, if at all?
So look, as the president of the United States has got two roles, being the executive president of the country, but he's also a politician, and therefore he has to play to the domestic galleries, and he has to choose words which he thinks is appropriate for his gallery. In terms of what came out as the fact sheet on this trade, it doesn't look like India has opened up the gates, the floodgates for US imports. It looks very, very calibrated. It looks very thought through, and some of the concessions will happen over a period of time so that the industry gets time to adjust. So it doesn't seem to be what President Trump made it out to be. The facts are much more nuanced, and obviously it is crafted in a manner that it's beneficial for the Indian industry. And I'm sure from the US side, they would have crafted it in a manner that it's beneficial for the US industry.
And finally, of course, we've now seen this tariff deal, just on a side note, between the United States and Bangladesh. The United States agreeing to reduce this reciprocal tariff down by 1 with a zero tariff access for some textiles. What have you made of the negotiations over in Dhaka?
Well, it's interesting because obviously it has got a flavor of geopolitics, but from pure comparative perspective, from an industrial perspective, the 1% difference that the Bangladesh has got does not make its products more competitive than India's, and that's the sad fact because of the logistics, the supply chain, the access that India has. In fact, some of the access that Bangladesh had through the Indian logistics infrastructure has also got curtailed because of actions by the Bangladesh government. And hence, the renegotiation of the tariff on Bangladesh from 19% to 18% in context of India getting a similar trade deal will not necessarily translate into a larger export for Bangladesh when it competes with India in the similar market.
Dr. Bhattacharya, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, it's a great pleasure to get your insight on these economic matters. We now move on to some breaking news over in Europe. And French President Emmanuel Macron is calling on Europe to step up investment